Medicine to treat fevers or just let the fever be. I have seen both sides. I have been on both sides when it comes to fevers, especially in children. And I have heard a million times fevers are good. That means that your body's trying to burn off the virus or the bacteria. It's a good thing. But man, my mommy heart cannot handle my 2-year-old with a fever of 103.8, moaning and miserable on the couch. I don't know about you, but when I have a fever of like 99.5, I feel pretty crummy. And when it hits like 101, I feel awful. Like run over by a truck, don't move, awful, moaning, curled up in a ball, awful. And all I think is, please let this fever go away. I feel so miserable, I can't stand it. So when I see a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 10-month-old with a fever of 103.8 writhing in my arms while I've got the cool compresses and the wool cold socks on the bottom, and I've tried the different natural remedies and they're not feeling better. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just a bad mom, or maybe it's my pharmacist brain in there, but I can do something. I can treat that fever. And there's so much judgment lately when it comes to fevers. Let the fever go. Let the fever go. You're being a bad mom if you treat the fever. Oh my goodness, I cannot handle a kid on the couch for 4 days with a fever of 103.5. Right? I mean, kids don't get fevers for like an hour. They get fevers for days, right? My kids all get super high fevers. And I have to do something about it. And I'm sorry. Maybe I don't know if I'm just a bad mom or what, but I am okay with giving fever medicines. And up until like 6 months ago, Tylenol was totally fine to give. Breastfeeding, nursing, babies, adults, you can give Tylenol. So up until like 6 months ago, there's this new controversy with Tylenol and how it gets in their brains. It might cause autism. Maybe it has something to do with a certain gene that kids can have and people can have that's triggering autism. This is news to me, and I know that news to me is not fact, right? Like I have switched over when it comes to vaccines, so I'm not completely opposed to learning new information. But I have 4 kids. My sister has 3 kids. We have used Tylenol on all the kids and no issues whatsoever. It's not like we're using massive doses for like months on end, right? They take the Tylenol, it's out of their system in 6 hours. As a pharmacist, I know how this works, right? I'm okay with giving Tylenol or ibuprofen. Now, caveat, ibuprofen works better for fevers for my kids. So my go-to is ibuprofen. But when I have a kid who has a fever of 103.8, they throw up because they feel so miserable, they throw up. So now I'm not even dealing with a miserable moaning kid, I'm dealing with a throwing up miserable moaning kid. And if I give them medicine, it brings their fever down to like 99 and they feel so much better and they stop throwing up. Yay! Ibuprofen works great. It just does. I dose it according to my child's exact weight instead of the over-the-counter dosing table that they give you, because that means that your 24-pound kid is getting the same dose, 5 milliliters, as your 35-pound kid. That means that your 24-pound kid is getting probably a little on the high end, right? The highest end of the dose, and your 35-pound kid is getting the lowest dose in the dosing range when they're not quite up to the next level, right? The 7.5 milliliters. So I make sure I give my kids a dose specific to their weight. I use the pain and fever dosing guide for infants and children that my sister and I, who are both pharmacists and moms, developed, and it's on Amazon. You just type in pain and fever dosing guide for infants and children, and it will literally list out the weight and the exact dosing range you want to give. So if you want to give your child the lower dose or the higher dose, you can decide what dose of the medicine to give. But back to the ibuprofen. It works better. It works longer, but you can only dose it every 6 to 8 hours. What happens if it wears off after 3 or 4, which happens with my kids. They're 103.8, drops them to 99, and as the medicine wears off, they start creeping back up, and they're at 101, 102, And by 6 or 8 hours, they're back to 103.8, feeling miserable for the last several hours. So I am not opposed to using Tylenol, acetaminophen. I'm not. And I've never had an issue with it. My kids are healthy. They seem totally fine with it. I just give them for a couple of doses and then they're fine, right? So then what I do is I give my kids ibuprofen, and then in 3 or 4 hours, if their fever's starting to creep back up, I'll give them Tylenol. And then I wait 3 or 4 hours, and if their fever starts creeping up, I'll give them ibuprofen again. It's alternating the medicine. So the ibuprofen is only given every 6 to 8 hours, but the Tylenol is given every 6 hours in between the 2 ibuprofen doses. And I have a problem with sitting there going, oh, my poor baby has a fever, but it's doing its job. My 2-year-old doesn't understand that. All he thinks is, I feel miserable and nothing is working. And I want my mommy to hold me, but I still feel awful. And as a mom, I think I can fix this. So why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I fix it? I guess I'm just a different breed. I know there's people who go to medicines right away. I know there's people who will say, never, ever, ever will I give medicine. I'm an in-between. I think it's reasonable to give medicine when my kid needs medicine. Let me show you the book I'm talking about, because I have one over here. This is the book. It's called The Pain and Fever Dosing Guide for Infants and Children, a guide for providers and caregivers, so moms and dads. It was written by me and my sister. And you just open it up, and in here you find your product. So this is the generic infants and children's acetaminophen. This is generic for Tylenol. And it all comes in that same concentration, but you always want to make sure you match the product with the table you're using. And then you literally just go down the weight category, the column, and you find your child's weight. So if they're 30 pounds, you go over here and it says you can give anywhere from 4.3 to 6.3 milliliters. So if they just need a little bit to get the edge off, give them the low dose. But if they need a lot because they're in a lot of pain or their fever's super high, you can go with the high dose. The other cool thing about this has Tylenol and ibuprofen. It has the infant's ibuprofen and the children's ibuprofen. They're different. So just make sure you match the products before you use the chart. But what's really cool is over the counter, they say if they're under 24 pounds or if they're under 2 years of age, ask the doctor. That's not necessarily because you can't use the medicines. I use it on my under 2-year-olds. It just means that the dose isn't given on the label. And you have to ask the doctor for the dose. So if you already know you can give your kids these medicines, you don't have to call your doctor. You just look it up on here. So, if they're under 24 pounds, this whole section right here is from 9 pounds up to 23 pounds. And you can say, oh, my, 1-year-old is 20 pounds. I can give 2.3 to 4.5 milliliters of ibuprofen. How convenient was that? Now you just get them dosed and they go back to bed. So super nice. The other thing is because, like I said, I like to alternate doses when their fevers are super high. The other thing that I have in the back of this book are 20 of these dosing charts. And you can just track your kids' doses. So like I gave acetaminophen, generic Tylenol, 4.3 milliliters at midnight because they had a fever of 104. And then I gave ibuprofen, 4 milliliters at 3 a.m. because their fever was 101 and creeping back up. And that way you can keep track of the medicine. I also use just 1 page per kid because if you have multiple kids, you don't want to mix it up. So it'll have your child's name, how much they weigh, so you can easily reference exactly in this book what the dose is, and then the date, and then the chart. So I love this thing. I know I'm the one who made it, but I use it every time my kids are sick and need more than just the 1 dose. Like I said, I cannot fathom just sitting there saying, sorry, little kid, I know you're miserable, but your fever's working. I know it's been 3 days of you feeling awful, 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 and there's something I could do, but I'm not going to. I just don't feel good about it. So, if you like this information, great. Like and subscribe to my channel. If you are interested in this book, you can find it on Amazon.com. Just again, type in Pain and Fever Dosing Guide for Infants and Children, and it'll pull it right up. It's $14.99 for the book with all the charts and the tables in the back. So have a great day.